Hi everyone, welcome to eSign on the dotted line using electronic signatures and perceptive content. I'm Jody Teal, Account Executive on the Education team, and I also have Sheldon Lysandro with me here. He's one of our sales engineers, also on the Education team, and he'll be taking you through a product demonstration. Before we get things kicked off, however, I just want to just let everybody know we are recording this session, and we'll be providing everybody with a link to the recording by Thursday. So you can expect to receive that via email if that's something that you do want to share with other colleagues, or if you just want to review this. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for taking time out this afternoon to learn a little bit more about our eSignature solution. And we have a mixed audience. We have a lot of customers as well as some prospective customers out there. And I know most of the audience represents college, universities, and school systems, K through 12, too. So welcome, everybody. For those of you who aren't as familiar with us, we are Perceptive Software. We provide enterprise content management solutions. And currently, we have about 850 education-related customers, which is by far the largest footprint of any other ECM provider out there on the market today. So eSignatures, and I used to work in higher education, so I kind of put myself in your shoes and thinking about just the task of having to deal with wet signatures and getting people to actually sit down and sign a physical document and the challenges that are involved with that. That's one of the things that we'll be discussing today. We're also going to go over just a review of the solution. What are the results, how it can benefit you, and create more efficiencies in how you're processing information today. And then Sheldon's going to take you through a demo. I think he has about 3 different scenarios. He's going to walk you through more common scenarios that we see with the solution. And then, of course, we're going to allow for time for some questions and answers. If we don't have enough time to get to all of your questions, we will be following up with you individually to make sure that all of those are addressed. All right, so let's touch on the challenges. There are a number of issues that can come up when you are dealing with having people have to sign a physical document. And I'm just putting on some of the main ones that we've heard from our customers. Obviously, anytime you're dealing with hard copy paper, physical paper, you're going to have issues with lost documents or misfiled information. That's just sort of a common issue that happens. And that can be very expensive and time-consuming to replace those documents. Not to mention it does take a hit on customer service as well. I mean, as you can imagine, we've all probably been in a situation where you think somebody has information that you sent them, and to find out that it's misplaced, it definitely can take a ding on you. So, and I know with today's competitive environment, how important that customer service and the relationships that you have with your constituents is so important. The phone that you see there, that kind of represents sort of the back and forth that happens when you are dealing with signatures. There's a lot of what we call rework that often happens, meaning I hand you a document to be signed, and at that point I don't have any more control over that document. So I'm having to wait for you to sign it and send it back to me. And there can be all kinds of issues that come up with that. Procrastination can be one of those, but also maybe they signed in the wrong place, just kind of creating some challenges that way as well. And so there continues to be that back and forth that happens that we all know can be very time-consuming and frustrating. Compliance is another big one. I mean, these days, we all hear about FERPA compliance, SOX for accounting practices, and HIPAA on the health services side of things. And so that accountability and those regulations are critical to everybody's business practice these days. In a hard copy world, it's a little bit more difficult to stay on top of those because you're not actually able to see what happens with the document, when it's being signed exactly, and so that information is not available to you in that hard copy world. The other thing you see here, and hopefully it's a little confusing to you, is a representation of an illegible signature. And I can tell you I'm as guilty of that as probably most anyone. And my signature is atrocious. And you have a hard time looking at a document being able to decipher that I'm the one who actually signed it. So there are issues that come up with that that also can impact overall data integrity as well. And what this boils down to are challenges that you face in terms of resources, whether that's time that you're having to devote to this process, human resources, the people that have to be involved in tracking down all this information, and of course that always leads to cost issues as well. So what is eSignature? It's really a collaborative effort between Perceptive Software and eSign. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with that name. They are a leader in the electronic signature technology, and we've partnered with them to develop this solution. And sort of in a basic overview, it's a web-based solution that's fully compliant that allows you basically to replace that idea of a web signature with an electronic signature. That's really the easiest way to remember what exactly this solution helps you do. The other really cool thing about it is that you can actually get signatures from sort of outside of your inner circle within your school system, within your college or your university. So you can extend this to other constituents like parents, it could be attorneys, it could be counselors, physicians, anybody who may not have access to any of your current business applications and that really don't need to have access to those. You can use this technology with those folks. It really does open a whole new world for you in many areas to improve processes. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of how folks can sign on the documents, and you're going to see some of this in the demo, but the user has the ability to leverage a mouse, just like you would with a pen. You move the mouse around to sign the document. You can also type in a signature, so prompt a user to actually just type it in with their keyboard. Or you can also leverage an external device. And so just something like a signature pad that we're all very familiar with using when we're in retail environments. One thing I did want to make sure we cover is the difference between a digital signature and an e-signature. Now, since we do have a lot of customers on the call, some of you may be using our solution called Document Control Suite, which leverages digital signatures. A digital signature is really more of an approval process, an approval for what's contained or the content within a document. So if you take curriculum design, it may be a good example here, and if you have sort of a final document that contains the changes that are being made to that curriculum, and I digitally sign that, it's just saying I approve the content of that, and it helps you just kind of track that. What an e-signature is, though, it is a wet signature, physical signature that someone would actually apply to a document. So it's not really an approval step. It is strictly a signature. So hopefully that helps kind of clear that difference. The things to keep in mind with the e-signature, it does not require an dimensional license. You do not need to have the document control suite for it. And also you can work with sort of one-off situations. If you just need sort of randomly a signature or something more occasional, you can leverage the solution for those activities as well. The other thing just to mention to you, too, is that you do have flexibility in terms of the deployment options. So this can be something that we can host for you, or you can elect to have it on premise as well. So what? What are the benefits? What would this mean to you if you deployed eSignature? Also, it just reminded me, you also may hear us refer to as e-authorized, and it's really talking about the same solution, eSignature or e-authorized. So just a heads up in case one of us mentions one of the other terms. Number one is that reduction of cost and delays. Because it's happening electronically, you're passing that information through that way. You can take advantage of things like prompts, which will help speed up the process and get those documents back to you in a much more timely manner. Of course, reducing the amount of time you're having to spend on that, and also cutting back on the delays that can happen in the hard copy world. The other thing is you have the ability to see exactly where things stand. It's kind of like lifting off the lid and looking down on your processes, so you can see where the document is, when it was signed, who signed it. All of those details will be available to you, and that's something Sheldon's actually going to talk to you about in just a couple of minutes. It also eliminates a lot of the legal challenges you may face in the hard copy world. And because there is that audit trail, you're able to actually prove any kind of activity around the signature process. Again, who signed it, when it was signed, where it was signed, etc. I know we talked about compliance before, but there are also regulations in terms of how we design the solution. And I just want everybody to also be aware that we are compliant with all of the major eSignature acts or compliance regulations. And then lastly, the big one is you get it right the first time. So reduce that rework that we talked about before. You can actually read the signature, which would be helpful, which reduces a lot of errors that can happen subsequently. And it just helps kind of eliminate any kind of mistakes or errors that you may be making in the process as well. There are a number of key features within the solution, and Sheldon's actually going to take you through most of these. But I did want to just place a little bit of additional emphasis on identity verification. And this really ties back to how we are able to offer this outside of your inner circle. So to those third parties, the parents, the attorneys, physicians, et cetera, anybody else that you may need to sign documents that aren't affiliated with your school system or the college or university. And we do this through an identity verification process, and he will touch on that for you. I'm sure as you're thinking about the, across a college, university, or school, the number of documents that actually have to be signed physically. And so there's a ton of use cases for this solution. And so we just have a couple of slides just to kind of give you some ideas that may spawn some other thoughts as well. And I just wanted to highlight a few. Sheldon is going to take you through some of the more common ones that we see in financial aid, HR, and purchasing. But I did want to highlight a few others. One of these is actually physicals, and this came up in a conversation that I had with a customer recently. They have a graduate program that focuses on occupational therapy, physical therapy, and also physician's assistance education. And they require, once a student's been accepted, they actually have to take a physical themselves. And the doctor has to sign off on that document. It's a form that the school provides to the physician. And it creates a lot of challenges for them in terms of delays and getting that information back from the doctor. So this type of solution is really going to help them speed up that process and also just make it easier for the physician too. So overall improving the customer service as well. Another one, I mentioned this before, curriculum design, but this is another common conversation that we have. And it's because the approval often involves board members, and oftentimes board members don't have access to the business application. So again, this helps you extend this electronic signature option sort of beyond that and to those board members who are involved in those important decisions. Some other examples we see are research and grant. One of the things, they're sort of a microcosm, if you will. So if any of you have a department like that, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of times they have their own AP, their own HR, et cetera. But one of the things they deal with commonly are, research agreements with any of the subjects or participants that have to sign off on those documents. And as you can imagine, a large university who puts a lot of effort into research, that happens quite a bit. So again, something that would help really kind of ease the burden of time and resources that are currently being applied to that. And then this is kind of interesting. I just did a quick little Google search and put in, signature requirements. And this is what came up the most often, were student financials, third-party billing. So for those tuition programs, those prepaid programs that we see a lot that are funded by state government or even private organizations, there are a lot of signatures that have to go back and forth regarding those within student financials or the bursar's office, where, again, the solution could be very applicable. So with that, hopefully that gave you some good ideas in terms of how the solution works and where it can be applied. And so from here, I'm going to hand it off to Sheldon, who is going to take you through just a couple of additional slides, and then we'll get into the actual product demonstration.
All right, thank you, Jody. Great overview. Let me go and transition real quick. Okay, so as Jody mentioned, I just have a couple of slides to get through, just to show you some of the deployment options, and then introduction to the demos I'm going to show you. So let's just first talk about the eSignature or eAuthorize deployment options. The first way you can use this is to use it via workflow. So if you have a perceptive content or an ImageNow document going through workflow, you could route it to a signature queue. That would trigger an email out to the signer. So the signer would receive an email with a link to that document, and they click on the link to sign the document. So pretty easy stuff there. The second option I'm going to show you is the one I'm probably going to focus on more in the demo. So this one is eForm based. So the signer would submit a perceptive content eForm or a transform. An eForm or a transform gets populated from a document template, and the document is immediately presented for signature. So there's no email sent out. The document just gets presented right there, and they sign it right there. And then additional signatures can be emailed to signers. So in a sequential signing process, we can send it out to additional approvers, which we'll see in the demo shortly. And then the last deployment option is through business application integration. So if your business application is creating any sorts of document templates that need signature, we can create that. The document is presented to the signer for signature, and then that can either be emailed out or immediately presented to that signer. With all three of these solutions, the final document can get stored within Perceptive Content, so thus securely keeping those documents in Perceptive Content/ImageNow. Okay, so for the demonstration, there's going to be three scenarios we're going to look at today. The first one is just starting you off slow, so signing a W-4 in an onboarding situation. So we're going to show you here how we can immediately present you with a signature using one of the transforms. And then the second scenario is a purchase order request. So in this scenario, you'll see two separate signers and one where an approval is needed. So a couple different steps there in signing a purchase order request. And then the third scenario is focused on financial aid dependent verification. So in several situations where an organization or a financial aid department needs to send a dependent verification worksheet out to a parent, we can have the student sign it, the parent signs it next, but we have to prove that the parent is who they say they are. So we use knowledge-based authentication to do so, and we'll see that within the demonstration. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first scenario. Okay, so this is the onboarding process. So the scenario we're going to look at today is we've notified a new employee, and my employee's name is Sally Young. And Sally needs to go out to the internal employee portal to fill out her onboarding form. So what we're looking at here is just the sample portal page, and Sally Young, you can see, is signed in. So the first thing she's going to do is go over to the Faculty and Staff tab. And then she's going to see a list of links. So she's going to click on My HR. Once she clicks on that, she'll see a list of documents that are already part of her onboarding file. And then she's got an additional link there for Submit HR Form. So there's additional forms that she needs to fill out as far as her onboarding process is concerned. At the top there is a W-4 link, and once she clicks on that, that launches our form. Now notice here, if you look at the form, you can see this is a fully replicated government form. And as I scroll down here, you can see there's a button for an electronic signature. But before we sign it, let's go ahead and fill out the data in the form. So the way you can do the signatures is you can make fields required, make fields not required. So before they even hit the sign button, they'll be required to fill out several areas of the form. So on the W-4, you can see Sally's filling out who she's claiming as dependent. And then she's going to enter her first name, and then her last name, and then just add her address. So these are just the required fields that Sally needs to fill in. Social Security number. And then she has one last box there to say whether she's single or married, so she'll click single. And just for demo purposes, we'll kind of move forward here, but let's go ahead and get to the eSignature. So Sally just simply needs to click on the eSignature button, and that's going to launch the eAuthorize product. So the first thing she'll see is a couple welcome screens here, and it does tell her some instructions on how she can interact with the form. So she can review, she can review feedback, and then it takes her into the signed documents window right here. So this tells us all about the compliance that we adhere to. So there's a little section on the bottom there that says that this does comply with the requirements and standards of the electronic signatures in Global and National Commerce Act. Now you can see that the two compliance organizations right there. So Sally just needs to click on the I have read and agree to the terms and conditions above. And that takes us into another window where it just asks her to get started. And she can review the document if she'd like. But let's just go ahead and hit the next button. And this takes us to another window where you can see that she's got an area where she can sign with her mouse. Now, if you're using an iPad or another mobile device, you would actually use your finger to do this portion. But Sally's just going to use her mouse, and the first couple times you do this, it is kind of a weird experience here. But you can see that she's got it signed with her name right there. She can hit the next button. And then it tells her that all information has been entered and she can finish. So pretty straightforward stuff there with the signature. It does tell you that we can close the form now. Now let's keep going. If we look at her back in the portal page, you can see that she's now received the W-4 form. So let's just click back one. And you can see there's a W-4 as part of her onboarding profile. And then we're going to slide over to Image Now and look at the back office. And within Image Now / Perceptive Content, I've got a link here to a workflow queue that's called HR Payroll. And you can see Sally's document is now sitting in the workflow queue. So if any other additional routing needs to occur with the document, it's now sitting in a workflow queue. We can launch the document in the viewer and show you that all the signatures have been captured here, and it's just the one here. But we'll go ahead and zoom in and just show you the signature, and then there was a date timestamp automatically applied to that signature. So again, this is just one scenario where we are just collecting one signature. We're going to go to a second scenario where we are actually collecting two signatures and also asking for an approval of the signature. Let's go ahead and launch that scenario. So in this scenario, this is where a requester needs to immediately sign a purchase order request and then have that request sent out via email to his approvers. So what we're looking at here is just another sample web page where I've published a link out to my purchase order request. And in this scenario, I'm just going to play the role of Sheldon. Sheldon's in the IT department, and he's got to order some laptops for his new employees. So on the portal page, I'm going to scroll down, and you'll see a link there for my purchase order request. And I'll simply click that link. And here we're presented with a form. So this is a purchase request form, and then there's some key fields that we'll fill in here. So just bear with me for a second. There's some required fields that I need to fill in. So I'm going to be the requester. So Sheldon Lysandra, I'll add the address, the city, state, and zip. The phone number and the email address. Then I'm going to click on that it needs to ship to the same location, and then I'll start filling in my item detail. So let's just say this is item 25, Dell laptops, Let's do a quantity of 15. And then the per unit price is $17.50. So you can see the form actually fills in some of the required data. I can fill in any comments I'd like. And then I can prepare myself for the signature. Now before I do that, if you look at the information down below, you'll see that there's a first level approver that's already been filled out, and that's just some of the logic you can build within a form. So Sheldon, all his items have to be approved by Tom Richards. There's also an area for a second approver, so based on your business rules or business logic, we can route this around for additional approval. Now notice Tom Richards' approver actually has an email address, so it's just a generic ImageNow mail 99. We're going to route the document to Tom after Sheldon signs this document. So I'm going to take you through those steps we just saw on the W-4 form, and it's exactly the same. We're going to be prompted for a couple of different items here. So if you look here, here's the compliance window again, and we can hit Start Signing. Now Sheldon just has to simply sign it, so he'll click through the windows here. And then I'll do my best again to sign this. Mine's just as atrocious as Jody's, I guess. And yes, I do sign my signature with a little heart there. I'll go ahead and hit Next, and then my signature is complete. So after I finish the purchase request, that gets emailed out to my approver. So if I just jump over to my email, and this is just my generic account, so let's just say this is Tom's account. So Tom's going to sign in, and he can see that he does have an email. So it just says a document from Perceptive University is available for you to sign. So Tom clicks that, and you'll see a link down there to begin signing this document. Now in this scenario, Tom does need to approve it first. So you'll see the same windows that we saw earlier when we're signing the document. So we can just go ahead and hit Continue and check the compliance. And then one more window once Tom hits Next. He gets a window asking whether he approves or denies the purchase request. Now before he does that, he can review the document, so just to make sure that he's approving something that's that he's supposed to approve. So the new laptop for employee, let's just go ahead and approve it. So he'll click back on the Resume Signing tab, Approval, and hit Next. And then he can add any comments he'd like as part of the signature process. So after he's entered his comments, this then takes us into the signature, and just like we saw before, Tom can sign this with our mouse. Now we can use text-type signature, so it doesn't come in like messy like this, and it does also replace the electronic signature, so that is an option we can do as well. But notice Tom signed this, he can hit Next. All the information is entered. And then as an option, Tom can view the completed document. So once he's signed it, he can view the completed document to see all the signatures. So just right there in the browser, you can see here there's a purchase request with the signatures. Or as an option, he can get emailed a version of the purchase request. And you can see there's a link for it or an email for it. And he can view the document directly from a browser as well, again. And finally, just like we saw before with the W-4, we can send the purchase request into Perceptive Content for additional processing. So if I bring up ImageNow or Perceptive Content, I can click on my link there for Requisition Complete. And once I hit the Go button, we'll see that the PO rec has been received. It's in the back office, so now we can process this purchase request. So if we double-click that, we'll see the final purchase order request with all the signatures. So again, this is to demonstrate a way to show a couple signatures. We're going to do one more scenario where we can highlight a couple signatures being captured and also using the knowledge-based authentication to provide additional identity verification for a signature. Okay, so for our last scenario, this one deals with knowledge-based authentication for adding additional security measures around the signer, like I mentioned. The scenario we're going to wrap around it is a financial aid scenario, where a student has been selected to complete a dependent verification worksheet to verify some of the information that he filled out on his government FAFSA. So the student in this scenario, his name is Charles Smith, and as you can see on this sample portal page, Charles Smith is already signed into the portal. And then he can click on the Students tab and then go down to the Financial Aid link, which will, for one, show some of the other documents that we've already collected. And then he's got a link there for submitting some more financial aid forms. So once he clicks on that, he'll see a list of forms, and he needs to fill out the financial aid verification worksheet. So Charles is just going to click on that link, and this once again will pop up a form. Now in a normal scenario, we can have this pre-filled already since he's already authenticated into the portal. But just to demonstrate that, I'm just going to go ahead and click that Retrieve Student Info button, and this will fill in some of the required fields there. Now before I move forward here, I just want to point out that his parent's last name and his parent's first name were pre-filled into the form, along with the parent's email address. So after Charles signs this, we're going to send it over to that generic parent email address so the parent can sign it. So keep that in mind. So as we go forward with the form, Charles has just a couple more sections he needs to fill out. So section 1 down there on the household information, he'll just click on the dependent student selection there. And then he can fill out his household information, so I'll just fill in John Smith is my father, or Charles's father. Age 50, he'll be attending Perceptive University, and he'll be enrolled full-time. One more section on the form, we're just going to click on one of the radio buttons to say he's a tax filer. By doing this, this kind of triggers some logic behind the scenes. So when we send this over to the parent's only going to have one section that they need to respond to. So Charles is going to go ahead and sign it. As you can see here, he clicks on the sign electronic signature button, and this is going to launch eAuthorize. And again, we see those familiar windows, again walking us through the signature piece. Agree to the terms and conditions, and then we're going to sign it.
And Sheldon, this helps with data integrity, right? Because the parents are being directed to exactly what they need to sign within that form.
Yeah, exactly. So when the parent receives the form, they're not going to have to, review the whole form. They just need to go through the sections that they need to deal with in the form. So it kind of helps the parents out when they're signing it, so they don't have to review every single portion of the form. Okay, so the student, Charles, has signed it. Now we're sending this out to the parent. So we'll go ahead and finish this, and automatically the parent should receive an email. So we'll go ahead and close this form. And we're going to see something new here once the parent signs on. So let's go ahead and close this form. And let's just go into the parent's Gmail account. So again, just a generic account here, but let's go ahead and sign in. And just like we saw earlier, the parent's going to get a link to sign the document. We'll click on that link or that email, and you'll see a link in the contents of the email. All right, so you can see John Smith. This is who we sent it to. John can click on the Begin Signing link. This launches the form. Again, it walks us through the instructions. Now here's where I'm going to spend some time with you on this. This is the identity verification. So this asks for personal information that John Smith would have to fill out in order to continue the signing process. Now there's some fields that aren't required. I can easily configure it to require these fields like Social Security number and date of birth. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just having John fill in his address, city, state, and zip. So if he gets this wrong, he wouldn't be able to continue the signing process. So John's going to fill out his address, so 222-333 Peachtree Place. The city is Atlanta, state is Georgia, and the zip code is 30318. Now, assuming that's correct, this is going to take him into a next window, which is a series of challenge questions. So for the identity verification, there are some knowledge bases out there that eAuthorize or SureSign works with to provide these identity verification questions. So, when you fill out a mortgage or something along those lines, there's some questions that there's some data stored in some databases out there that you may not be aware of, and that's kind of what's happening here. So, John, the parent, has to answer these identity verification questions, and if he doesn't get these right, then the signature piece is going to be invalid. So he's going to choose Joe Anderson here, which is, I believe, the person who we purchased the property from. And then Fulton County is where he lives, so we'll just hit continue. And then what type of residence is Peachtree Place? We'll just choose single family residence. So when he hits the continue button, you'll see that he gets a signing password. So if he wants to hold off and sign this later, he can use that password to launch the link again and fill in the signing password. However, if he does get any of those questions wrong, again, that's going to invalidate the signature. Someone on the back office is notified that their signature is invalid, and we have to start this process all over again. So again, it just kind of goes into the data integrity of who's actually signing the document. Well, let's just go ahead and continue. So once we've got our signing password, we can go ahead and continue the signing process. We get the terms and conditions compliance window. We click it one more time. And I know you guys have seen this several times now, but let's just go ahead and finish the process. We can review it one more time. But after all the knowledge-based authentication, we finally get to where the parent can sign it. Now, before we do that, there is one section that the parent as far as our business process, it has to fill out here, so they can say that they use the IRS DRT, checks that radio box, and then hits next. Okay, so here's the signature once again with our mouse. And there's John's signature. So just like we saw before, John can review the document. So he can press that completed document button. And he also gets an email saying that the document's been complete. So if he looks in his email box, there's a completed document sent via email. And then just like we saw before, the document's now stored in ImageNow. So if we go over to ImageNow, and actually before we do that, we'll show that the document's been collected. There's a verification worksheet, so that's from the student end. And then on the back office end, we'll just jump into ImageNow. And then there's a verification worksheet link there. We can click on that, and that shows us our verification worksheet's just been received. And if there's, again, any other back office processing we need to do, we can route that forward. Okay, so with that being said, those are the three scenarios I wanted to share with you. Let me just quickly jump back into my PowerPoint and show you one more thing. So at the end of the day, after all these signatures have been collected, there is a nice audit report that's created. So the audit report shows you things like where we sent the signature to, if it was an email, what IP address it's actually going to, and if you kind of look on here, there's some things like the actual email address, the IP address, when they started using it, the exact the signing steps. So if there was additional signing steps, like we saw with the approval, we can see when they started that, and so forth. And finally, we can get to where the document was completed, and then even when it was sent into Perceptive content. So all of that's tracked and all stored nicely with the document in ImageNow. Okay, so I know we're getting close to time. I did want to go ahead and open it up for questions.
And just, Sean, real quick, just before we do that, I did want to make a comment. I was watching the demo, and thank you so much for that. That was great. One thing that struck me, though, was and we kind of glossed over this at the beginning, but just was the convenience factor from a customer service perspective. And I was thinking, if I'm that parent, I mean, how nice that would be to be able to go online, sign that document, rather than having to worry about printing it off and then faxing it and trying to locate a fax. I mean, who has fax machines in their homes anymore? I mean, so it just makes it that much easier for them and just a much better experience. And then if you're doing any kind of online shopping, you're used to getting at least one of those types of prompts to kind of authenticate yourself. So I think this is something that most people will be very comfortable with as well. So I know we only have a few minutes, so we're going to take a couple of questions and then do a wrap-up. But we will get back to everybody's questions, so please feel free to continue to submit them.
Okay, so I'm seeing a couple questions here. Okay, so there was a question on the verification prompts. In the case of parents, where are they coming from? So as I mentioned, SureSign, our partner, they contract with a knowledge base, and I don't have the knowledge base off the top of my head, but they are a public knowledge base that they distinct to. So if there's any public knowledge on the parent, those are stored in the database, and the questions just react to the parent's information. So if they provide something like an address, they know that that address ties to certain questions within that knowledge base where they can pull those data points from. Okay, there's another question on does the signer have to have anything special installed on their device to sign? And the answer is no. So they just need to have a browser to fire up the eAuthorize or eSignature, and then sign it with either their finger or their mouse, or they can even do the typed signature. There's a question on talking a little bit more about the audit process. What sort of data is stored? Again, that's the data that's stored is so the audit trail is when it was opened. There's date timestamps, where it gets sent to. So if it gets sent to ImageNow, we know that that's in the audit trail. IP address, email address, etc. Okay, so there's another question on whether the signed document. So the signed document, they noticed it went into ImageNow as a PDF. That was correct. Can this go in as a TIFF so that it is annotatable? The answer is yes, but we would need to have conversion module convert it from a PDF to a TIFF. Okay, I think I'll take one more question just because we're at time. So some of the fields that were filled out during the purchase order request demo, the question is, can that data be transferred to another system? The answer is yes. So once we collect data during the signature portion, we can share that in XML format and share it with any of your systems.
So it's something you can pass over into the scene information system or the ERP solution?
That's correct, yep.
Cool. Well, thank you, Sheldon. Unfortunately, we're sort of out of time at this point, but like I said, we will get back to everybody's questions. So please don't worry about that. And for anybody who's interested in learning a little bit more about the solution, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I'm actually going to put my contact information here, and then we'll be getting back to you regardless, but if it's something urgent or you do want to talk about it over the next couple of days, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and then I will put you in touch with the appropriate representative as well. But thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope you enjoyed what you learned about the eSignature and how it may be able to help you with your processes. Have a great day.